Blame, Marlowe, and I were so conveniently separated from Roger, left to just float around in the water and wait for one of the rescue boats.
"Screw me,"
Marlowe said, spitting a mouthful of water out. "Isn't this fun?" I laughed and nudged Blame. "Dog, this shit is emotionally traumatizing." Suddenly, something brushed up against my leg. "Holy crap, something's touching me!"
"Relax, kid,"
Marlowe said.
"It's probably just seaweed."
I felt the thing brushing up against my foot. Marlowe, I don't think seaweed grows this... Oh, crap!
"I think it's time to panic,"
Marlowe said, the last thing I heard before I was dragged down. I looked down, expecting at least a drone or angler to have grabbed my foot, but no. It was a giant tentacle that was connected to a giant mass of flesh under us. I felt my ears pop from the sudden change in pressure, and I knew that my whole head would be next, if I went any deeper with no protective equipment. I pulled out the kitchen knife I had packed from my waistband and started slicing at the thick tentacle. Below, I saw the blurry shape of a giant maw open in the depths, and I questioned why a giant monster would eat a person when it would be like eating one breadcrumb and expecting to be satisfied. I'd cut halfway through the tentacle when I dropped the damn knife. I dropped the damn knife. It sank deep into the depths below, and I felt my lungs burn. I very slowly drifted off and nearly suffocated. Then I saw a large shape swim through the water and tear the tentacle clean in half, and I was free. I floated up with my life jacket aiding me. As my vision cleared and I gained my senses, I realized it was Rita who had saved me from drowning. At the surface, I gasped and yelled, "Fuck!" as I coughed up water.
"Holy shit, son,"
Marlowe screamed, way louder than I was comfortable with.
"I thought you were a goner."
"Me too." "You got balls. Did you want to go swimming?" Rita suddenly splashed out of the surface, treading water with ease. I began,
"You're so very welcome,"
Rita said.
"There's at least a dozen more of those monsters. Wait here."
"Where else would we go?" Rita sighed in response and dove under. A few minutes later, multiple pools of blood floated up from the depths, and limbs, tentacles, heads, chunks of flesh, and organs soon followed. Rita surfaced, then took a breath and dove back under the water and swam away from us, presumably to the other boats. "What do we do now?" I asked.
"Fuck. I should have stayed at home today.
I'm second-guessing this shit. I was fucking baked when I agreed to it."
"Fuck,"
Blame said.
"I have a radio, but it's completely waterlogged and absolutely useless out here,"
Marlowe replied. "We're fucked, man." We spotted one of the smaller battleships and crawled onto a floating crate, using our legs as we swam over, climbing onto the ladder and getting on. Strangely, there was no one aboard. Marlowe took out his incredibly wet and probably unusable pistol, clearing the lower decks, as Blame and I followed, though I was seriously questioning why I had agreed to come up here in the first place.
"Fuck!"
Marlowe yelled. "What?" Me and Blame both yelled, running into the room. A giant drone was trying to take bites out of Marlowe, who was struggling to get his pistol to fire. Blame and I spotted a stray pistol lying on the ground, and we both lunged for it, but Blame beat me to the punch, grabbed it, and emptied the magazine into the monster's face. But somehow, every single bullet had only clipped the monster. Or maybe that was just because of plot convenience. The drone thrashed violently and jumped back, giving us a chance to escape and slam the door shut. But within 5 seconds, the drone broke down the steel door and jumped out, separating Marlowe and me from the drone. Blame and I on the right of the drone and Marlowe on the left.
"I'll distract it,"
Marlowe yelled, taking out his knife and making Joe Rogan gorilla noises. The drone ignored the veteran and started crawling towards us. "Oh fuck," Blame said. "Run!" Blame and I started running for the lower decks, slamming the door shut behind us whilst Blame reached into his pockets and pushed as many pennies in between the door frame as possible. "Where the hell are the weapons?" I screamed as the monster slammed on the thick steel door. "Isn't this a ship made for war or something?" That's when I spotted a naval manual, textbook, logbook, whatever. I grabbed the very thick and heavy book, just as the drone burst through the door, and I slammed the pointy edge of the hardcover book as hard as I could into the creature's soft throat. It stopped, choked violently for a second, and slammed the bloody book into the monster's head. Then I smashed it on the monster's spine as it screeched and fell. Blame violently body-checked the monster in the neck, and once it was completely down, Blame and I took turns beating and stomping it to death until we were sure it would never get back up. Marlowe managed to open the already broken door and just stared at us absurdly beating an eldritch monster to death using a textbook.
Cool. You guys killed a monster using a textbook. Let's get the fuck out of here, boys.
Marlowe used the radio equipment on the ship, which was a very lightly armed ship that had probably been overrun by a group of creatures, and he called a rescue boat to come pick us up. In the distance, I heard gunfires from one of the ships. Kyle laughed maniacally as he fired the .50 caliber machine gun mounted on our boat into the deep water below. "I haven't fired these since Afghanistan," he said, having the time of his life. A gigantic swarm of eel-like creatures with squirming appendages was surrounding the ship, which Kyle was taking out by the hundreds, thanks to his machine gun. Flamethrower-wielding former World War II German soldier, wearing a cracked black gas mask and dressed in black full kit, was spewing black flames into the water, instantly killing anything it touched. We called him the Undead Nazi, and rumor had it he was a half-successful super soldier experiment done in World War II. He reached into the water, unharmed by his own flames as he picked up a giant squirming leech-like horror. His gas mask split in two along with his face, revealing a giant mouth filled with giant teeth and 5 tongues. The undead Nazi shoved the creature into his mouth and bit down, spraying black monster blood everywhere. I nudged Zach and raised my eyebrows. What a dude. One of the battleships had just finished fighting off a swarm of giant anglers, came over to us, and we quickly boarded the ship as our little rescue boat immediately got overrun with monsters. Holy fuck, I gasped, as we went below decks, reloading our weapons and taking a second to calm down. That was intense. Where's your nephew? Zach asked. Oh fuck. I just realized that we must have gotten separated as our ship got flipped over. Just another reminder that I was a fucking crazy for illegally bringing 2 teenagers to a literal war zone. Shit, I yelled. We must have gotten separated. Zach held his radio to his ear, listening to the chatter. Never mind. I heard some guys on the radio saying they picked them up. Looks like there really is someone looking out for us, I said. What's next? I'm hearing that there's an underwater cave system directly in our path. The overseer and a few of the Navy officials think the monsters are trying to attack from under us in an ambush, so we need to eliminate them before we can head to the main swarm. Why don't we just bomb the bloody place, or go around? Then we could have a few problems, Zach said, taking out a short swig from his flask, as Kyle walked off to eat whatever he could fit in his mouth. It's an underwater cave system. No aircraft deployed bomb is going to reach that far and accurately take them all out. If we redirected our course, they could attack us from behind in an instant. How? I mean, isn't the Navy supposed to use some classified crap on these creatures? They don't have any equipment or weaponry that can do the job? You're fucking stupid, aren't you? I graduated from one of the best colleges in the USA. And you're an oversized redneck. And you're literally unemployed. So we go down there with submersibles, then get out in extreme deep diving suits manufactured by the Leviathan killers, go deep into the cave system and plant a timed explosive. Our actual job would be to protect the assholes who planted the bomb if you didn't pick up on that. I noticed a huge plot hole in his sentence. The ocean under us is like 10,000 feet deep. Extreme deep diving suits can only go 2,000. If we went further than that, the pressure would turn us into literal human mush. Like I said, the Leviathan killers developed a special suit that can dive up to 12,000 feet. And they also made special guns we can fire underwater. That does not make sense, I said. And yet, it's going to. Funny how that works. Just shut up and go with the flow. I sighed. When are we going? Right now. Bugger off, I just went through a traumatizing event. I was joking, dumbass. Obviously. Get some rest, you're gonna need it. Being a former Navy SEAL with the unique monster hunting experience he had, Kyle was joining us on operation, and a small batch of former Navy SEALs would be accompanying us also, while we assisted with the explosive guys. As for why I was joining the operation, as one of the most qualified marine biologists on the entire operation, I was instructed to observe what kind of new life forms were down there, what kind of natural weapons and biological defenses they had, and what they were, as if someone with common sense couldn't do the same.
You're clear to go.
The operator said through the radio in my helmet. We were on the deck of the boat we were stationed at, being suited up in the giant mechanical extreme deep diving suits which allegedly could dive up to 12,000 feet deep beneath the surface. After being fitted with the suits, our team went off to the side of the boat directly above the cave system. The back of our suits connected to extremely long steel wires that were anchored to the ocean's bottom. Our team was fitted with special underwater rifles that possessed projectiles with the stopping power of a bullet. What the fuck? I muttered, as an eldritch cephalopod covered in human heads passed us as we sank. Look to your left. What's up? Kyle asked through the radio. I saw him descending on the wire about 6 meters away from me. You don't see that? Don't you see what I saw as the abomination darted through the water to Kyle and the SEALs, tearing off the head and helmet of one of the commandos. Instantly, everyone fired their rifles, which sent tiny shockwaves into the water, as every single one met their target. The monster screeched and started thrashing, and Zack slashed the monster's stomach open with a diving knife as it passed over to escape. I threw a grenade at the monster's stomach, but forgot we were underwater, as it sank deep into the water before exploding. Someone managed to pierce one of the monster's intestines with a bayonet, which eventually killed it. I watched as the dead creature sank, and was instantly swarmed upon by the more normal ocean creatures who tore into it. What the hell? Well, do your job and record the logistics and shit, one of the SEALs said. How deep are we anyway? Why? How deep are we? I asked again, a little pissed off. What does that have to do? Dude, just fucking tell me. 600 feet deep. I laughed and said, thanks, before doing my job. Since I had no real way to write anything down, which should have been fucking obvious, I made some mental notes of the monster's physique. As we descended, we had to fight off at least a few dozen more eldritch monsters and beings, including a very bright ball of squirming worms and eyes that was taken out by a bomb. By the time we reached the bottom, 3 guys had died, but they were some of the more expendable. When we finally reached the bottom, I was actually really surprised that the suits had held up to the pressure. We detached from the steel cables leading us down and tied ourselves with steel wire to the cables to keep us from getting lost as we freely roamed. "You're right," I said, into the microphones set in the helmet. "About what?" Zack said, seemingly knowing I was referring to him. "The suits held up. What kind of material is this even made out of?" Something gigantic moved in the distance. Even the extremely bright lights on our suits couldn't illuminate a fraction of the thing, which must have been a mile away, but appeared only a few hundred meters away, in a gigantic and bare expanse of ocean floor.
"What the fuck is that?"
Kyle asked. "One of the largest organisms I've ever seen," I replied in awe and horror. I looked back to the dark void that was the deep ocean, and the only sign that there was something giant in the darkness was that a large part of the blackness ahead of us was somehow even darker than the rest, moving. From my estimates, the monster was probably 700 feet long and was some sort of cephalopod. Without any warning of any kind, a gigantic burst of heat and light erupted directly on what was part of the monster's head, lighting it up. The head was exactly what I expected it to be. A gigantic, hinged jaw with dozens of thin, straight teeth surrounded by thrashing masses of tendrils. Using the suit's extremely high technology, I was able to move a pair of powerful binoculars over my eyes by tilting my head diagonally, and I saw that the person killing the gigantic Leviathan monster was none other than the undead Nazi, who was spewing flames from a seemingly infinite backpack flamethrower, his gas mask reflecting the light. What the hell? How the hell is he able to survive the pressure?
"Well, he's not human, at least anymore. Biological engineering, extreme physical enhancements, drugs, some mechanical surgery shit, DNA splicing, the usual. And he's not even the strongest one."
"So what do we do?" I asked as the undead Nazi dragged a curved sword down the main length of the monster's hide.
"Let's search for the crap, guys, we found it,"
Kyle said through the radio excitedly, and we turned and waded to the rest of the squad, who stood at the edge of a 50-foot wide underwater cave entrance that led deep into the earth, where the monsters lurked. We all checked our gear, checked if the bomb was locked in and ready, and entered the cave. The inside of the underwater cave was much darker than I had expected, and as soon as we entered the cave, at least a dozen of the crustacean-like creatures we had first seen at the core facility and had killed afterward on a public beach leapt out at us. The deep crawlers, the nickname I had given them on the spot, were instantly mowed down by us, as blood and monster guts floated everywhere. Zach wiped a streak of blood off of his visor and grinned.
"Alright, now shit's getting real."
They were all around us. At least 50 deep crawlers were screeching and slashing at us with their razor-sharp legs and appendages, as our extremely durable suits held up and protected us. We fought like hell, protecting the explosive techs as we slowly advanced deeper into the cave to where the bomb would destroy everything. The deep crawlers fought tirelessly, but for each one that came out of the deeper tunnels, our team killed 2, our modified bullets slaughtering them by the dozen. "How much more do we have to go?" I screamed through the radio, throwing a grenade into the thicket of monsters. My movements dragged and were limited due to the very heavy deep diving suit.
30 feet,
Kyle screamed.
"I think."
The monsters were thinning out, when out of the great dark depths something utterly enormous and gut-wrenching swam out. Standing in front of us was a gigantic version of a deep crawler, with more legs and a more crown-like and spiked black carapace, and a sunken mouth, filled with razor-sharp teeth.
"Oh crap,"
I said.
"Fire!"
Zach yelled. At once, everyone started firing at the giant monster, the bullets slamming into it, but they did nothing. If the regular deep crawlers were fairly resistant to small arms, this giant son of a bitch was impervious to the equivalent of elephant-killing rounds. The monster then, without eyes, looked directly at me and bit the sleeve covering my arm, lifting me up as the fire ceased.
"Bloody hell, do something!"
I yelled, firing into the monster's throat. I felt the steel joints of my deep diving suit bend slightly in, and I knew if the monster punctured it, I was screwed, and I would turn to mush as soon as I was exposed to the pressure. I stuck a grenade down its throat and stabbed my dive knife into the roof of the monster's mouth, making it release its grip. I quickly swam away and ducked behind a boulder and waited for the explosion. But we just stood there and waited as the monster slowly convulsed and stopped moving. But that wasn't it. And without warning, a cloud of light and shrapnel exploded from the monster's throat, followed by its guts and blood, making a gory mess under the water. The monster collapsed, still intact, at least from the inside. This bitch was so durable that even when the grenade exploded from the inside, its outer exoskeleton still stayed intact. "Did you see that?" I yelled. "Its exoskeleton didn't even explode!" We finally reached the sweet spot where the bomb would detonate and kill anything and everything that was within range further down the cave. The DB Coopers set the explosive device on a rock, set it to blow in 15 minutes, and we got the hell out of there. "Oh shit," everyone said at the same time, stopping and looking at something I couldn't see. "What?" I asked. "Oh." Directly standing in the middle of the exit of the cavern was a very tall, slender, and midnight black monster that had a head of crab-like legs surrounding a giant eye for a face. It was covered in dozens of glowing and bleeding runes and symbols on its skin, with a human-like mouth on the left of its hand. Even with our helmets and water around us, we could hear its booming roar. Our radios boomed with a deep voice, and judging from the heavy German accent, it was him. "Need assistance?" Suddenly, the monster was engulfed in giant black flames as the undead Nazi who had presumably killed the giant monster from before laughed. The undead Nazi's entire chest was ripped open, exposing his bleeding ribcage, but he didn't seem to mind as his own flesh was bandaging itself together. The two started fighting, and the undead Nazi drew the monster away from the cave's entrance, letting us escape. We only had 5 minutes. We ran across the ocean floor as fast as we could and reattached ourselves to the metal cables. We started ascending, making decompression stops as the two monsters fought savagely beneath us. The Nazi slammed the monster into the ocean floor and violently shoved his flamethrower into its mouth, pulling the trigger. The blast of flames poured out, brutally goring out the monster's head, as TUN gave himself a second to relax. "How much time till the entire fucking ocean explodes?" I asked. 5 minutes? Seconds! A gigantic explosion erupted from somewhere deep beneath the ocean floor, and in the underwater cave we were just in. I watched in awe. In the temporary illumination beneath us, the flames and orange bursts revealing a massive part of the ocean floor that collapsed and gave way. "Fuck yeah!" Carl cheered. Just as we neared the surface, we saw a familiar figure starting to ascend, and thinking it was the undead Nazi, we were slightly relieved, still nodding to the fact that he was a failed Nazi super soldier experiment. But it was the monster the undead Nazi was fighting, somehow alive and angry as shit, thrashing its way toward us. "Hostile inbound!" Kyle yelled into the radio. "Pull us up!" We started firing at the monster, but it literally ate our bullets, as I saw it catch a bullet in its teeth and break it. We had to stop once more near the surface to decompress, and we threw our grenades below us to buy time. We were then pulled up onto the deck, and the assistants quickly got to work taking off our diving suits. The monster slammed onto the deck, and as soon as it did, it was instantly pummeled by small missiles, machine guns, sniper fire, grenades, flamethrowers, and grenade launchers. When the literal smoke cleared, it was still there and alive, just extremely wounded and bleeding to the superior firepower. "Where's the Avengers?" I screamed at Zach. "Probably fighting something else." I was still half in my extremely heavy deep diving gear as I ran behind a machine gun, trying to figure it out as fast as possible. If only there could be a... As if on cue, Goliath walked on the deck and sized up the monster, which I had taken to calling the Hand because of the open mouth on the palm of its left hand. "I'm going to mess you up," Goliath grunted. With that, Goliath stepped forward and backhanded the hand, with enough force to crumple a car. The hand flew to the other side of the ship and smashed into the railing, quickly getting up and slashing its hands out at Goliath. The two started running toward each other, colliding in a brutal grappling match, tearing skin and biting each other in a display of utter brutality. Goliath pulled out a machete and sliced the hand's arm off, as the hand jumped back and slammed Goliath into the ground, breaking his helmet and probably dislocating his jaw.
"Fucking you,"
Goliath said. Another figure jumped from the deep water and hacked the hand's other arm off with a sword. The undead Nazi sheathed his sword and held his flamethrower, burning the monster's flesh right off, stopping when Goliath snuck over and cut the hand's body into 3 pieces, continuing to cut at his body until it was just a collection of severed gore. After that, Goliath stomped on all the gore and punched it until it was a puddle. The undead Nazi burned it all to a crisp and threw the ashes off of the boat. "That's some dirty work," the undead Nazi said. He and Goliath nodded at each other and went their separate ways to cause more destruction to the eldritch horrors.